Okay, for our next speaker, Ruth Mayo from the Department of Psychology at Hebrew University of Jerusalem is a social cognitive psychologist. Dr. Mayo studies negation and falsification processes, as she perceives the negation process as an essential part of the cognitive apparatus, and that studying this process enables a better understanding of our mind. Dr. Mayo will talk about how context may affect the Spinozan belief model. Please welcome Dr. Ruth Mayo.
So thank you, Eric, for gathering all of us. I think that one of the main reasons that we are all here is that we are concerned regarding the battle between information and misinformation. And indeed, in this era of a lot of information, that much of it is wrong, misinformation, fake news, if we do accept the Spinozan model that when we understand something, we immediately have to accept it, and in order to reject it only as a secondary process demanding cognitive resources and motivation, then this portrays us all as helpless and irresponsible by being affected by any encountering information. And indeed, this is what most of the research in psychology suggests, that we have a difficult time behind false information. We keep using information that we know is false in our decisions and judgments. Warning becomes recommendation, so if I'm told that it's not true, that the side effects of the flu vaccines are worse than the flu itself, I remember that they are worse. The tendency to say yes to any incoming question or idea, and of course the false memory phenomena, where even though we initially correctly negate an idea of something that should have happened to us, eventually we end up believing that it did happen to us and it is like true memory. So all of this portrays us as acceptance is a primary process. What I want to suggest to you today in my talk is the other side of the pendulum, and to suggest that rejection can be a primary process. And of course, the truth is in the middle. I think that we have both primary acceptance and rejection as a primary process. It all depends on context. So I'm going to do two things, I hope, in my talk. One is to demonstrate how we can successfully reject information, and the other how it can be a primary process. So let's start with successfully negating. How do we negate information? How do we process and encode negation? We propose two main models. One we call the fusion model, because what is happening is that the core of the negation and its negation tag are fused into an alternative affirmative schema that entails the meaning of the negation. It sounds very complicated, but it's really easy. So if I'm told that someone is not a tidy person, I simply think of messy. And messy is the alternative affirmative schema that entails the meaning of not being tidy. So immediately I have congruent associations, and I will remember the information correctly. However, there is another model that we term the schema plus type. And in this case, what happens is that we think of the schema that is negated. So I think of tidy and tidy associations, and I tag it correctly with a negation marker. But because I'm having this association of tidiness, and because the negation marker is a separate construct, any factor, including simply the passage of time, may lead to it getting lost, and I will remember just the opposite of the intended meaning of the negated message. So I hope the essential difference between the two models is clear. In the fusion model, we immediately think and in the long time remember the true meaning of the negated message, but according to the schema plus type, we're stuck with the schema, and we might actually remember just the opposite of the intended meaning. So what is the critical condition needed in order to process and encode negation according to the fusion model? Well, let me give you an example. If I tell you about Max, and I would say that Max is not an honest person, what kind of associations come to your mind? You're thinking of lying, deception, theft, fraud, and cheating, right? All of which are congruent with my message to you about Max. Now I will tell you about John, and I will say that John is not a romantic person. What kind of associations come to your mind now? And I think that you're thinking about anniversaries he forgets, love letters and poems he never writes, candlelight dinners he never prepares, and flowers that he never brings. All of these are actually associations of being romantic that we correctly negate. So the difference between the two is that for romantic, there is no opposite. You either are or you're not. There's no alternative affirmative scheme. And this is what we did in our very first studies. We looked a description that we term bipolar, that have a clear opposite, smart, stupid, happy, sad, and descriptions that simply don't have an opposite, like adventurous, romantic, even responsible. This is, by the way, all in Hebrew, in which we don't have prefix, we just have the word and a clear no with it, okay? But we did test it in English as well, but that's not time. Okay, so we tested how people process the negation and affirmation of these two types of descriptions. For each description, we created a behavior that is congruent with the core of the message and not with its negation, a behavior that is incongruent with the core of the message and congruent with its negation, and a behavior that is irrelevant to the core or to its negation. And we let people read the description and then the behavior, and they have to decide which type is it, congruent, incongruent, or impossible to tell, and we measure their accuracy and time. And our predictions are very simple. If I am told that someone is tidy, I have tidy associations, and therefore I'll be faster for the congruent than for the incongruent judgment. If I do according to the fusion models in negation, then again, if I'm not tidy, then I think I'm messy. Again, I will be faster for the congruent associations than for the incongruent ones. The only time that we predict that this will flip is for the schema plus time model. If when I'm told that someone is not adventurous, I actually have adventurous association, I would be accurately more faster for incongruent association than for congruent ones. And I don't have time to go over it, but this is exactly what we find. We find that always congruent behaviors are responded faster. Only for the unipolar description negation, it flips. These 3 times interaction is significant, but I don't have time to go into it. We also tested their memory. We surprise memory test about their descriptions, and we find that for bipolar description, people lose the negation time 14%, but for the unipolar description, people lose 38% the negation time. So if someone is told that he was not responsible, we remember them as responsible. So we conclude that we have both the schema plus tag and the fusion, but the critical condition is whether we have an alternative schema. If we do, we move to the fusion model. If we don't, we're stuck with the schema plus tag. And this is very important. And for example, for the false memory examples that we have in our research, in all of them, what we have suggested that happened to us going on an air balloon with my father when I was 3, there's no opposite to it. Okay? You bring up this image to my mind. I say, no, it didn't happen, but there's no alternative way to code this or get me lost in the mall when I was 5. So regarding this information, this is a very important point to remember. Because, for example, saying that there's no link between the MMR vaccine and autism, again, we're not giving people alternative affirmative schema. There is no one for non-autism. So Horn for example, gave in one of their conditions to their participants an alternative affirmative schema by showing them pictures of sick kids and the statistics about illnesses that the vaccine eradicates. And in this group, parents were more willing to consider giving the vaccine. So in all my studies since then, I always think that it is critical to think whether there is an alternative schema. If there isn't, we're stuck with a negated concept. If there is, a lot of factors can influence which kind of concept is more activated. Okay, so even if we have an alternative concept, it will not always be the one that we're thinking. I find individual differences, context differences, and the interaction between them that can affect it. But that's another talk. For today, the point is that Spinoza suggests that the immediate thing that comes to our mind is the negated concept, and only if we have time, cognitive resources, and so on, can we activate the alternative. And what I want to suggest to you now in the second part of my talk is that in some contexts, we immediately think of the alternative. So, for example, congratulations, right, is a wonderful word. We love it. Especially if we get it in our inbox from a journal, so we click on it happily, and we think, oh, we're going to change the world with our finding. Some of us think of glory, some of us think of tenure. However, the same word, same inbox, but from an unknown sender promising us that we won $5 million, and I think that we all stop and delete and think of losing money and the rest of it. So the difference between the two is trivial, right? In one, we trust the source, and therefore we think in a congruent way with it. But in the other, we simply don't trust the source, and therefore we make sure not to be influenced in a congruent way. What I want to suggest to you now is that this trivial difference that is a strategic response regarding a specific untrustworthy source actually demonstrates a mode of thought that we have in general. And that is a distrust mindset. And what I mean by mindset, I mean that it is induced by any contextual cue or simply a personality and has a general spontaneous effect. And therefore, in all of my studies, distrust is manipulated completely incidentally or measured as a personality disposition. And the effect that we test are always regarding facts that has nothing to do with distrust. So what I want to say is that I'm not going to show you strategic responses. So first we looked at associations. We created a trust and distrust context by creating untrustworthy face and trustworthy face. And then people saw a face, a word prime, a target word, and they just have to say whether the word is a noun or a target. And we have two types of pairs of targets and targets. One is congruent, hollow, empty, and the other is incongruent, full empty. And usually people are faster to respond to empty following a congruent prime than an incongruent prime. So this is how it looks. Slow down, you see a face, a word, and then the other word, and you have to decide if it's an adjective or not. I hope you agree that there's nothing about this stuff. And what we find is that on a trustworthy face, people are indeed faster for congruent primes. But following an untrustworthy face, people are actually faster for incongruent. And the interaction is significant, and we find it for other kind of distrust manipulation, and even when we simply test free association tests. Next, we wanted to move to the more process of it, and we showed one of the, I think, really basic confirmation bias, congruent bias that we have, our tendency to seek, interpret, and create information in ways that verify existing beliefs. A lot of us spoke about this yesterday. And I use a rule discovery task by Wason. In this task, people receive a series, 2, 4, 6, and they have to think, what is the rule that the experimenter had in mind? And most people think of a +2, but the interesting point is that they get an opportunity to write down 6 series to check if they are correct. They will get a check mark for each series that indeed is congruent with the rule, and an X if it doesn't. Okay? And the interesting point is that people just do what we term positive testing. They write only series that confirm the rule they had in mind. So they write 10, 12, 14. If they want to be original, they write -2, 0, +2. And they get check marks for all, and they think that they got the rule. But even if they wrote 1, 2, 3, they would get a check mark as well, because a rule is any ascending number, right? But they never get it because they don't test it. So we wanted to see whether in a distrust mindset, people will actually think how to disconfirm, to negative test their own hypothesis. So in this case, we have a between subject, half saw trustworthy face, half saw an untrustworthy face. We told them that it's an impression task, and that they have to keep the impression in mind, and we will ask them about at the end of the study. This is in order to keep the mindset on their mind. And then we gave the rule discovery task just as a filler task for some time to pass. And what we're interested in is how many people will write at least one series that is disconfirming their own hypothesis. If people do that, we call them disconfirming. And we find that in trust, after I saw trustworthy face, most people do only confirming things, only positive testing. But if they saw the distrust face, 60% thought of at least one disconfirming series. If we look at simply the series, we have about 7% disconfirming series in the trust condition and 27% in the distrust condition. Interestingly, we did the same experiment without manipulating trust, but just measuring it at the end of the study. And we find that people who are chronically highly distrusting do significantly more disconfirming series than people who are highly chronically trusting. So in order to see it more on a spontaneous cognitive level, we went for the repetition priming task, in which a stimuli is presented. First, we will react to it faster the second time we see it. But if we distrust immediately when I see X, I think of an alternative, then X should lose this advantage of a repetitive prime. So what we have is, again, on cases of untrustworthy and trustworthy, and people thought that they are learning category presentations. They saw a category, for example, pets, with 2 exemplars, and we told them that in this learning phase, we will put noise such as faces, so we saw a face, and then a time, and then the response. And they had to say if it was in the category or not. So the answer is yes. And this is an example of a repetitive trial because it sees the cat both in the timing and in the response. In the alternative trial, they see a dog, the cat in the timing, but a dog in the response. In both cases, they need to say yes, it was part of the category. However, this is a repetition, and this is an alternative trial. And the question is whether the type of face will affect how people respond to it. So this is how it looks. And of course, we also had a filler task where a filler trial where they saw a goldfish and had to say no, it was not this category. And this is all within subject, okay, both the faces and the type of trial. And indeed, following a trustworthy face, we find the repetition priming effect significantly there. It's completely gone following untrustworthy face. So when I see a cat on an untrustworthy face, I think of the cat as much as I'm thinking of the dog, of the alternative. If this is true, then priming should be diluted in distrust, right? So we went to the classic Donald, way before Donald Trump paradigm in the 70s by Higgins et al. And what they did is they primed people with either positive or negative traits, and then they gave them to read an ambiguous paragraph about Donald, and they had to judge Donald. And the finding is that if I was primed with positive traits, I perceive Donald much positively than if I was primed with negative traits. So what we did is we went on Enter, we gave people to do a word-on-word lexical task, half saw positive traits, half saw negative traits. Then they read the description about Donald and created their impression. We did a fill test, and at the end, we just measured trust, so we even didn't manipulate it here. And again, what we find is that for people who are highly trusting, we find a significant priming effect. They perceive Donald as significantly more positive, following positive prime than following the negative prime. But again, this is completely wrong for people who are highly distrusting. And importantly, it's not that people who are highly distrusting that had a bad impression of Donald all over. It's not that. It's only that their judgment of Donald was not informed by the priming words. So naturally, we went to the embodiment effect, which is in a way different priming paradigm. We went for William and Barge experiment where touching a warm cup makes us perceive someone else as having a warmer personality compared to a cold cup. And what we did is we asked participants at the beginning to write down an event in their life. They could trust someone, or an event that they could not trust someone. This was between subjects. Again, we always ask them, keep this event in mind. We will ask you about the event at the end in order to keep the mindset alive. Then they simply evaluated a therapeutic fact that was either hot or cold. Did the act person A, active person? And we did find the embodiment effect in the trust condition, and it's completely gone. If I just wrote the distrust events that happened in my life, I am not affected by the therapeutic fact. Again, it's not that the distrust has a general effect on the impression formed. It's not that person A was perceived as colder after a distrust prime. It's not, of course, it's affected the physical feelings. It only eliminated the transformation into the cognitive concept of the person who works. So the last experiment I'm going to show you is about ads, because ads are embedded within content article on the web to be seen by the consumer in order to bring a specific brand to mind, thus to make it accessible. So we thought, what would happen in a distrust context? So we had two types of ads for a well-known brand of diapers, and we planted them in online articles that varied only on the dimension of trust. We had one article about a unique hobby of raising homing pigeon, boring and trust, and a distrust that was about the report that listed all the ways in which citizens are being deceived by government institutions. And this is how it looks. I'm sorry that's in Hebrew, but this is a well-known, it looks like a well-known news site in Hebrew. This is a text, you read down, and then a pop-up ad for Pampers appears, you keep reading, and then another ad appears. And we told them that they will be tested about the content of the article. And in order for some time to pass, we will give you business school questionnaire. So we asked them to name a brand of toothpaste that you're familiar with, and then evaluate it, and then to name a brand of diapers that you're familiar with, and evaluate. All of our participants were not parents, so they didn't have their favorite diapers. And all we're interested is how many people will say Pampers. And we find that following the trust article, most people write Pampers. Following the distrust context, most people write the competing brand, which in Israel for Pampers was Huggies. So we find the distrust due to basic cognitive process, which makes us think of alternatives, and therefore we are not as affected by the encounter. My conclusions are that distrust is a feeling that things are not as they seem to be. And if we conceptualize our cognitive process as situated tuned to meet the requirement of any context, it suggests that contrary to the default state of trust, distrust actually leads us to a mode of taking characterized by rejection rather than acceptance. And I really love Norbert Schwartz's quote saying that context sensitivity is not noise that we need to overcome. It is a message. We should keep it. And in our context of this symposium, I think it means that the Spinozan model is correct for the default state that we're in, which is trust. However, in distrust, I think that what happened is that the first reaction, the primary process, is rejecting any incoming information. We actually need motivation and cognitive resources and time in order to be able to accept the information that we are encountering. So if I take you with this kind of cue, you will not be sure what's going on, but if I take you, yes, you will.
That was great. Let's open up for questions. So just as a reminder, we'll try to keep it into the microphone just because we're taping this. So, yeah, that's okay.
Thanks so much. So one thing I'm wondering about, at least, I don't think that this would explain everything that you're talking about, but some of the results. I wonder if you can vote at all for the fact that distrustful crimes might grab attention away from the other students that you're listening for. So, for example, if I show you something that's like really grabs your attention and then I give you a crime, it would make sense that that crime would be less effective than if I show you something really boring and give you a crime. Or if you're reading a really boring story, you might be more likely to look at something else on the page than if you're reading a really riveting story. So I wonder if you think that could be what's going on.
Okay, I can see the way that makes sense. However, then it wouldn't work by just measuring distrust and context and personality distribution. And we find each time exactly the same effect. Each experiment we did both as a personality and as a contextual factor. So it doesn't work like that. I think writing an event of my life that I distrusted someone and then doing other tasks, again, I don't think, maybe it is, demanding, but then why am I faster for the incongruent? Why is something else is higher than the prime? Okay, why am I thinking of incongruent association? Why am I thinking of competing brand? I have no easy way to explain that as just grabbing information. And we even have this for the spook effect, by the way, to show trustworthy or untrustworthy faces. And people are faster following an untrustworthy face for the incongruent truth task that actually demands more resources, right, usually. So I don't think that's the explanation. Yeah.
So I'm curious about the relative versus absolute findings in terms of belief and disbelief.
Yeah.
So very often we're used to making comparisons between particular conditions, right? So in this condition we believe more or less than in this. But how about in terms of absolute? Were there ever conditions where people 95 or 100% always doubted?
Doubted what? I mean, I didn't even ask about beliefs, right? I just looked at how a crime affects them.
But there were findings there with percentage of subjects who, who doubted or who rejected.
Yeah,
Did that percent ever go above 50%?
Yeah, what I'm saying is that I never measured really belief or your judgment or your evaluation. I just asked, what is the representation that you have on your mind? And I find that in the distrust mindset, you actually think of the alternative and not of what I suggested. But if I understand you correctly, and I hope I do, I do think that, for example, the reason why people are now so much into misinformation and fake news and these conspiracy theories is because trust is a problem in our society and people don't trust. And therefore the main, regular, boring reality of things is perceived as less true than this alternative, really interesting possibility that comes to my mind, okay, or someone offers. So I think that indeed, in a distrust mindset, people will believe more an alternative than the mainstream suggests. But I want to stress that I never did this like that, so it's a jump from my research. Okay, thank you.
I love that. It's really great, and I wish it went 3 times as long. But 2 quick questions. One that just checking. There was no load condition in any of these, so I'm wondering whether you think the same, because it's not the most inconsistent idea that the ability to reject when you're primed for rejection is the sort of thing that one can do when they're a little bit agitated. So I was wondering if there were any load conditions where you didn't.
When we just started, we only did this load because, as other people here, as Eric said, my first initial inspiration was reading the article that you cannot not believe everything you read. And that is a point that I also can remember the minute that I did that. And there is a load. So we started, the load had no impact on our effects. So it doesn't matter. In the trust, you find that people are still thinking of the priming and are primed. And in distrust, people are thinking of alternatives. And load has nothing to do with it.
Load has nothing to do with either the personality, either if it's dispositional or if it's primed?
I don't know. We never tested it with disposition, only with our priming. It's a good question. I would guess that, again, my suggestion is that it's not something that is effortful. It's not something that you need more. We don't see any time cost for it. So I would think that in a distrust mindset, you immediately think of the alternative. You immediately reject the prime, or at least not affected by it, no matter if there is load or there isn't. But I didn't check it with personality measures.
So I mean, I think that would go against Dan's 1993 study, the second where he told people ahead of time, this information is going to be false,
Yeah,
right? And
but in this study, if I remember correctly, it was, for example, if I had a gun or if I didn't, and there's no opposite. If I don't have a gun, if you hold a gun, there's no opposite way to code this, right? So I have a gun image in my mind. So the initial, and this is why I started my talk the way I did, you have to have an alternative schema to code the information with. If I don't, then even if I'm distrusting, I'm stuck with this image because I have nowhere to go. So one has to have an alternative representation that he may go to if he's in a distrust mindset. And I agree, if I understand your comment correctly, that distrust mindset, the point of it is that it is prior to our processes. So this is why we're good at discounting and correcting when we are in a distrust mindset, because it's before we encounter the information. I agree that if we already encountered the information and then I would do the distrust priming, I would not get the same effect. But again, a critical condition is to have an alternative schema. If I don't, then the story will look different. It's an interesting point, by the way, that people create alternatives, even if there's no clear one. So for the free associations, if I say on an untrustworthy face, if I say the word Hebrew, on a trustworthy face, people will say language, Israel. On an untrustworthy face, people will simply say English, Spanish. Okay, so they think of alternatives, even though there's no clear opposite to it.
do you want to follow?
I'll follow that.
We can talk.
I find the untrustworthy face priming effect really interesting. I just wanted to understand, is it the case that in these studies, people basically see a trustworthy face, untrustworthy face, so they're basically mixed together?
Exactly.
So
yes.
Isn't it sort of on the mental level really surprising that people can switch? Basically, the time scale of the process is one that I wouldn't associate with holding a trustworthy or non-trustworthy disposition. It's almost within 1 minute. You can switch 3 times and still be as effective. Is that something that you would?
Thank you.
That you
This
would
is
hold?
exactly what I'm saying. Yes, I think that we both have the chronically affect of being a highly distrusting or trusting person. But the point is that each one of us has this ability in the mind, and our mind is so sensitive. Aristotle showed that people can perceive a trustworthy or untrustworthy face in less than 40 milliseconds. Okay, so people do it really fast, and I think that we're so sensitive to this clue that if someone comes in, most people, the default is trustworthy, but if someone comes in and he has an untrustworthy face, we immediately think differently. And yes, the point is that in most of the studies, it's within subject on a trial-to-trial basis, and we get the effect. So people change very, very quickly their response to think in a congruent or incongruent way, whether they saw a trustworthy or untrustworthy face. And I think that's what's amazing. But again, I think it really makes sense that this is what our mind is supposed to be doing. It is supposed to be context sensitive. We should not think all the time the same way. We should be accommodating to what's going on. And trust is a very basic demand in our life.
This is really interesting, thank you. So maybe a weird question. So the way we tend to measure in our work conspiracy beliefs is something along the lines of, some people believe this conspiracy theory, whatever it is. Some people don't believe it. How about you? So this is making me think about how the phrasing of that, because it's a negation, it's not an alternative, right?
Yes.
That instead of saying that, some people believe this conspiracy theory, some people believe, and then put an alternative explanation in there instead. And so I'm wondering, one, do you think under the negation one, more people would be inclined to believe maybe the conspiracy theory, or whether trusting or distrusting mindset might moderate even that question wording difference? Yeah.
First of all. And I think usually conspiracy theories come with, in comparison to some other mainstream claim, right?
Sometimes, yes.
Which presents alternative schemes. Okay, so usually people have it. So I would not ask, do you believe or not? Okay, and I think it also has an evaluated component to this type of question. But I do think that when you present this, conspiracy theories are usually like the false memory, offering some images that we never had in mind. We never thought that, I don't want to say anything, everything is loaded, but we never thought about this option, right? So we have this image now in our mind, okay? And then it's very difficult to negate it unless I have a very good explanation. So if you tell me, I take it rather neutral one, the idea that we never landed on the moon, Americans never landed on the moon, and they show us the picture and the flag is, moving, and say, but there's no wind on the moon. Why is it moving? Why are there no stars in the picture? Why is there no crater where it landed? And so, if I know that when I stuck the flag and I actually made it move, the fact that there is no atmosphere in the moon makes it move even stronger, then this is alternative schema that I will be able to negate the conspiracy theory. So this is why information is so critical. However, if it's still more interesting to think that people were paid and that it was, in 51, area 51, then maybe this will be more vivid. And this is exactly what I'm testing all the time. And there's a lot of reasons for the alternative versus the main one to get up.
I think we'll have to stop there.
Thank you.